Welcome back to my channel. This is Minal Akshakar having 9-year experience in iOS. So my today video is related to core data in Swift and introduction of core data. So before moving further on the video, if you did not subscribe my channel till now, then subscribe for further informative video related interview questions in iOS development. So moving on the video. The topic of today is related core data and Swift, and we will discuss topic we will cover on this video are overview, what is core data, SQLite and core data, the entity, the object graph, the core data stack, and conclusion. So moving on the overview, certain iOS applications require a way to save data on a mobile device for offline use. For example, Apple lets you play your downloaded music on iTunes, and Amazon's Audible allows you to listen to your ebooks without internet access. Those features are enabled due to a client-side caching framework known as coredata. In this video, we will take a close look at the theoretical components that you need to understand when working with applications that don't rely on backend server. What is core data? So core data is a framework that you use to manage the model layer objects in your application. Let's define those terms framework. This is a group of predefined methods, classes, and modules we can use at a high level to work with core data without worrying about building it entirely on our own. In iOS programming, Apple provides a framework. In object-oriented programming, model layer objects refer to components of the application that encapsulate data into models. For example, a user model that has a name, ID, email, and password property. Essentially, core data provides us with a collection of predefined modules that we can use to create, read, update, and delete objects in a persistence layer. SQLite and core data. Bear in mind that core data is not in itself a database such as MongoDB or SQLite. Instead, it uses the built-in database system SQLite that comes with each iOS device. Core data is a framework to manage an object graph, whereas SQLite is the actual relational database. Now let's dive into the main components of the core data framework. The entity. An entity is a class represented in the object graph. It has a name, properties, and optionally relationships. Each entity created is an instance of the NS entity description class. The object graph. Xcode provides an interface for developers to view each entity and its relationship ships in a database like view. This is called the object graph and can be seen when you click on the data modeled file. The object graph is useful for many things, including viewing and editing your entities, creating relationships among your entities, and many other functionalities. So, this is an Xcode representation of an object graph. The core data stack. Think of the core data stack as a team of main players that run the game. There are four main components we must be aware of: persistent container, manage object model, managed object context, and store coordinator. Each component has a specific task and coordinates with others to support core data. Let's take a look at each of them. So in this image, you can see persistent container. This is called, which is called NS persistent container model, which is called NS manage object model context, which is called NS manage object context, and stored coordinator, which is called NS persistent store coordinator, which used to store the data. So the persistent container. NS persistent container simplifies the creation and management of the core data stack by handling the creation of the managed object model, persistent store coordinator, and the managed object context. So the persistent container is the higher level abstraction class that encapsulates the most important components of the core data stack. Creating your core data stack with the persistent container makes it easy for you to interact with core data. The manage object model. A manage object model allows core data to map from records in a persistent store to managed objects that you use in your application. Next, we have the manage object model, NS manage object model. This is a programmatic representation of the XC data model file. This is because when you fetch data after being created and saved from the store, core data needs a way to represent it in code so you can display, update, or delete it. The manage object context. There are different types of operations when dealing with data storage. We can create, read, update, save, and delete data. Here is where the manage object context comes in play. The business layer of your application interacts with the core data stack through the object context, which in turn keeps a reference to the persistent store coordinator every time we need to make changes to the data in the store. The persistent store coordinator. Last but not least is the persistent coordinator. This acts as the bridge between the core data stack and the store database. When an object context makes a request to fetch all the items in the database, the persistent coordinator is the one that leads them up from the SQLite store and passes them back to the object context. So now friends, we will move on to conclusion. So we have already learned a lot about the core data framework. Core data is the most complex framework that iOS engineer have to understand and work with it. In next video, we will talk about the delete rules of core data, which is most important interview question asked in companies. So stay connected with me for getting new informative videos related to iOS development 2023. So friends, thank for you watching this video, and if you like this video then please like, share and subscribe for getting such type informative videos related interview questions asked in iOS development. Thank you.